End result of the last 10 years is the utter success of the left. It's not as if I want to be proven right. If I'm wrong, the society benefits. If I'm right, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate if I'm right. Everyone who resorts to this mischievous reduction is not a friend of a Hindu. My analysis is that Savarkar resides in our lips, Gandhi in our spine, and Marx in our soul. Savarkar resides on our lips, Gandhi in our spine, and Karl Marx in our soul. Because the rule of keep left has not changed. I genuinely believe that the end result of the last 10 years is the utter success of the left. They have successfully proven that even the ones who call themselves on the non-left use Savarkar exclusively for lip service, while having the will of Gandhi in dealing with jihadi terrorism, and while constantly pushing Marx in every realm of our social sphere, specifically in education and history. That has not changed.
So Savarkar on the,
Savarkar on the lips, Gandhi in the spine, and Marx in the soul. So, I say this for very clear reasons, and I'm not saying this because this is, wordplay at play. The existence of a right is, first of all, the biggest possible myth in this country. It does not exist. It does not exist whatsoever. It exists in breach, not in default. It exists in the proviso, not in the section, to put it in the lawyer's language. And it's a minuscule proviso which exists in enclaves and islands, not in the mainland. I'm going to be thrown two specific initiatives or two specific projects, the Ram Mandir and 370. This is what people are going to tell me. I will repeat this for abundant public consumption. Ram Mandir was well on its way even before 2014. Because the verdict of the Allahabad High Court came when no Hindutva party was in power either at the state or in the center. Because the evidence was so irrefutable, and most importantly, the determination of that case, let's say of the proponents of the case from the Hindu side. Come on, they fought the entire system when the BJP was not a political force to reckon with. They've been doing this for decades and centuries, for God's sakes. So the construction of the Ram Mandir, yes. But the verdict in itself, somebody else must take credit for it. The people who actually worked for it. And it's not just about the lawyers. All the groups that came together to make it possible. 370 in itself was never the goal. It was only a means to an end. Are we anyway close to reaching that end? Is it even remotely in sight? I'm completely with Anand when he says that how much can you expect the society to constantly wake up when it knows that it does not have leaders? Because even in cultural spheres, you need the Pareto principle at work where you have cultural leadership being provided. Thought leadership being provided. Every societal structure of the Hindu system and the Hindu way of life that was meant to provide cultural leadership was systematically destroyed by the independent Indian state by taking forward the colonial policy. Then the entire society has been rendered subservient to the state and to organizations without having their own means to protect themselves in any way, economically, socially, politically, or for that matter, even physically. So at this point, I'm genuinely hoping that out of sheer compulsion, the society will look inward. When I said this from 2014 to 2024, I was being told on social media constantly that this guy has no better thing to do than to constantly criticize those in power. Because I said, okay, let time prove me right. It's not as if I want to be proven right. If I'm wrong, the society benefits. If I'm right, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate if I'm right. Because it doesn't help me in any way. It endangers my family, it endangers my children, it endangers my extended relatives and my well-wishers, just as it endangers every other Hindu. So there is no vested interest or a dog in the race to be proven right, because then I'm investing in my ego as opposed to my own safety and the cause. And the worst part is that we are constantly waiting to celebrate every ephemeral triumph as opposed to looking for long-term policy outcomes. All other detractors or all detractors of the Hindu society invest in policy, and politics for them is a medium for policy, whereas we simply invest in politics without looking at policy. And the educated lot is more in the Hindu society, and uske baad bhi yahi halat hai. I'm blaming both parties, by the way. However, I will make the very clear statement that as long as this facade of normalcy continues, we will be outnumbered in our sleep, in our slumber. We'll be outflanked in our slumber. 3 back-to-back incidents in a place where supposedly 370 has been revoked, and not even in the valley, in Jammu.
4, I think.
Yes, and I'm so sorry for saying this, but I told you so is coming to my mind for a very good reason. 2017, when I delivered a lecture, thanks to Sangam Talks, on the question of Rohingya illegal migration, one of the first things I pointed out was they're encircling the cantonment of Jammu. How is it that people who come all the way from Burma manage to settle exclusively in Jammu? 2017, we said this. Previously, you had only Bangladeshis to contend with. Now you have to deal with Rohingyas as well. And history says both of them come from the same stock. This is no more academic. I completely agree with Vamsi Garu that rearming Hinduism is necessary, but I'm going in a slightly literal sense. And I'm making the very clear statement that can anybody accuse us or anybody of us in the last 10 years of not having disseminated enough knowledge for people to awaken? What do you think we've been doing? How many lectures have been spent crying horse on the subject? Your survival as a community doesn't matter. Your survival as an individual is the only thing that seems to matter. I'm consciously going to watch the next 5 years for multiple reasons, because I genuinely believe, against the deepest of my, let's say, nature, I'm an optimist to the core, but I'm genuinely going to watch the next 5 years for 2 or 3 things. The demographic inversion is reaching a tipping point in certain sensitive areas. I've never been a fan of cricket, Ashish. Never. Unless it's Pakistan on the other side, that's a different issue altogether. But even then, I find it absolutely absurd for us to invest in that sporting event thinking that they're fighting some kind of a war against Pakistan, because it's not the case. The kind of relationships that they enjoy with each other outside of the game and outside of the ground is very different. The rest of us are just idiots to think that there is some kind of a war going on there. I am of the view that, okay, us din cricket chal raha tha, you didn't know, news was still pouring in, so you didn't know. What happened thereafter? How many people reacted to it? How many people expected hard answers from the government? How many people posed uncomfortable questions to the government and saying, what exactly is happening there? We need a census as quickly as possible. Until and unless we have the numbers, we are being led down a dark path with music being played and with garland around us. And that can only lead to Bali ka Bakra from there. The jihadi thrives in peacetime because that time is spent in preparation. Whereas that time is spent by Hindus in celebration. And when suddenly you're caught unawares, you have no response mechanisms whatsoever. I certainly believe that there are some aspects of our problems and challenges that can be addressed legally. But law requires political will to be its starting point. The ball is set rolling by political will. Political will is made possible by political incentive or disincentive. As someone who also leads a regular professional life, I'm saying that Hindus are in that unfortunate position where they have no other option but to constantly scream and air their expectations. So in the interest of self-preservation, what are the options and cards on the table that you're actually left with? Almost nothing. Because the reality also is, what are the political options otherwise? Horrendous. If the elections of 2024 proved anything, you really have nobody else to choose from. What a pathetic situation for the largest democracy in the world. So the reality check that the verdict has given to both sides with respect to their respective positions is, according to me, the only silver lining of the outcome of 2024. Most of us remember how 2004 felt. So we should have been relieved that 2024 was not a 2004. But we are actually hoping that this would be a tipping point of sorts, because now is the time that the society also gets to stand up and make itself. So everybody has to go through an internal chintan and manthan in the language that they love to use. I am at this point positively jaded with these discussions. I have no more patience for them because I don't see the point of it. I'm just hoping that the actual works which will stand the test of time and posterity, such as these, will be constantly produced in the hope that the young generation that is consuming it will draw the right lessons, as opposed to reading pamphlets and propaganda documents. Because the hope is that we actually hold the mirror and speak truth to whoever is in power and say, sorry, our issues are yet to be addressed. When people said Kashmiri Pandit कर क्या रहे थे, वहां से उन्होंने पलायन कैसे किया, वो पलायन नहीं कर रहे थे, उनको वहां से भगाया गया. And don't ever point fingers at the Kashmiri Pandit community ever, because the rest of us are a macrocosmic representation of the Kashmiri Pandit community. It's only a matter of time and it's only a matter of happenstance that we are still not IDPs, internally displaced persons. And according to me, वो कार्य भी प्रगति में है, thanks to demographic inversion in multiple places. If Delhi is not safe, tell me which part of the country is safe. So, perhaps my only suggestion to all the youngsters sitting here, with the deepest of humility and with no intention to cause offense, हमारे साथ सेल्फी लेना बंद कीजिए, उससे कुछ नहीं होने वाला है. Just focus on ensuring that you ask the tough questions from the people who are in power. Don't get blown away and don't get carried away by propaganda from either sides. Hindus have to stand aloof regardless of who they elect and still continue to push their deliverables. That is the only bottom line. That's the only way you get the job done. And when I say Hindus, I mean those who are all practicing Hindus regardless of their jati, because I'm constantly accused of something else. So I might as well say this very clearly. As long as the person who is dying is a practicing Hindu, my heart will bleed for that person regardless of the jati. My position on the subject may be nuanced, may be slightly difficult or even calibrated for people to agree with. That's a different issue. But when it comes to a matter of life, livelihood, dignity and protection, I am on the same page as Savarkar. I am on the same page as all the people who stood for Hindu lives, livelihood and dignity. There is no difference whatsoever. For me, the means don't matter anymore. The ends matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Sai. And before we open it up for audience Q&A, I just have a small request of Professor Jaluri. Since we were talking about propaganda and media and things like that. So in our earlier conversation during the podcast, you had mentioned that you'll be working on the book on propaganda and how that has a relationship with Hinduphobia and the other topics that you've covered so far in your various books. So please expedite that work because we really need it.
Thank you.
Right.
Praveenji, where is Praveenji? Message for both of us.
So I think we'll open it up for audience question and answers.
Namaskar to everyone. This is Apratim Tripathi. My question is not directed at anyone specific here, but I would like to set the context by quoting a tweet from Mr. Sai Deepak. In the interest of making their law-abiding lives livable in an increasingly hostile environment, it would help to keep at a distance the newly minted, alleged Hindutva-vadi social justice warriors who push leftist anti-dharmic stereotypes under the garb of Hindutva using Savarkar. With that in mind, I have two questions related to Savarkar's Hindutva because we know there are certain definition problems. So, although it may be a misunderstanding, one of the byproducts of Savarkar's Hindutva has been the promotion of a neo-atheist idea, or what I perceive as an anything goes idea of Hinduism, which is contrary to ritualism and Devupasana. How much does this impact or say harm the essence of being a Hindu and of course Hindutva itself? Brilliant. Second part. Savarkar also advocated for the annihilation of caste, a stance he pursued vigorously in the aftermath of the Khilafat movement. He saw this as essential for protecting Hindus and organizing them into a Sangathan. How do you view this perspective? Also, it would be really insightful if all of you could discuss on this, including Ashish sir. Thank you.
That's why when I closed my opening remarks, I said that I stand with him on the question of protection of everyone. And I prefaced it by saying that when it comes to Hindu institutions and Hindu Jeevan Pranali, my position is obviously calibrated. The attack on Varnashrama Dharma, according to me, is the direct product. And according to me, that is the textbook instance of the success of leftist propaganda across the country. I will stand by the very clear statement that caste hatred, caste supremacism have no place. They never did. They should never have any place whatsoever. Be that as it may, Varnashrama Dharma certainly has purchased when it comes to some of our traditional institutions. Those who do not wish to subscribe to the values of those traditional institutions are under no fatwa-esque obligations to do so. You have been provided alternatives to it. From the Gayatri Parivar to every other organization that believes in disseminating the knowledge of the Vedas freely to everyone regardless of jati, there is no restriction whatsoever. The ones who wish to subscribe to those notions must equally have the freedom to do so because the Constitution permits it under Article 26. So the question that I would want to ask is, since the ones who constantly speak on the subject quote Dr. Ambedkar, did he put in a provision in the Constitution asking for destruction of caste as a structure or jati as a structure or varna as a structure, despite having written a book on the subject? For whatever reason, whether he wanted to do so to preserve reservations for a certain group of people, that's a different issue altogether, but he chose not to do so, right? I am of the very clear view that I'm using the position of Savarkar only for the purposes of protection from the outsider. But how this system will conduct itself within itself, there is significant diversity for everyone. You want to follow the Arya Samaji route, you have the freedom to do so. The problem arises when you're basically saying that traditional Vedic institutions must subscribe to and stand by the values of Arya Samaj or Gayatri Parivar or anybody else. We are saying, to each his own. These are institutions that are run by Shastras, these are institutions that are run by Smritis, these are institutions that are run by Puranas, these are institutions that are run by Sthala Puranas. Allow them to do what they want to do. Which means, assume for a moment, let's take the same Sabarimala example and take it forward. If you choose to construct a newly minted Ayyappa temple in any part of this country, and you choose that the rules of this temple will be very different from the rules of the actual Ayyappa temple, can anybody stop you from doing so? But that institution is the epicenter, and that institution will live by the book that has consecrated it or that governs its practice. Right? Let's assume for a moment you set up a new temple altogether in every street, wherever you want to. And you say, sorry, here Varnashrama Dharma will not reign at all. And we will choose to appoint somebody else as the priest because we believe that he's trained, he's good enough, his character, we want him. Who can stop you? Who will stop you? Legally, you can't be stopped. Shastrically, you can't be stopped. That's for you to decide. But what is it that you're constantly trying to do? Is that you're constantly trying to foist your notions on that group which is today a minority. That institution which is a minority. And the fact of the matter is, these are the only institutions that have managed to withstand the test of time when it comes to preserving the spiritual aura of that place. That is why people still go to these places of all the institutions that have been built across the centuries. These are the institutions everybody gravitates to. That is why when I use the word decolonization, I'm saying you have chosen to look at your own history with such an absolute loathsome vision that you don't even want to understand what it speaks of. You don't even want to understand what is its position when it comes to an Advaita philosophy, what is its position when it comes to Vyavaharik philosophy, when it comes to certain places. We don't want to strike the distinction at all whatsoever. So I am very clear that when you choose to use the very same stereotypes that were minted in the crucible of the missionary and the Marxist, and you use that under the social justice label, under the label of reform, to start attacking these institutions, you're not doing any service to Hindutva. And in fact, if I may say so, I say this bluntly, Savarkar would have disagreed with you, because you quote Savarkar when it comes to beef consumption. Savarkar never said that. Savarkar simply said, please learn to protect people as much as you protect cows. That was his position. He did not actively say that I will hurt the sentiments of Hindus by actually putting out pictures of beef consumption. You want to eat it? I'm sorry to say, I don't agree with it, but the choice is yours. I can't do anything beyond that, unfortunately so. But do you want to really hurt people's sentiments by doing this? I'm sorry, then how are you any different from Burhan Wani? You're not. Please understand this. Hinduism is calibrated and diverse. It doesn't follow the one-size-fits-all template of other religions. I am not saying dehumanize people. The problem is from here the jump will be, there Sai Deepak supports untouchability. That will be the jump from there. That will be the jump from there. Everyone who resorts to this mischievous reduction is not a friend of a Hindu. And I say this bluntly today, I am not going to hold my punches back. You want a textbook example of what happens when you start making the Brahmin the hate figure, and from there the jump to the church is not too far. Take a look at Punjab. Take a look at Punjab. They first decided to vilify the Brahmin in the name of newly minted versions of Khalistanism under the British period. From there they gradually moved towards anti-Hinduism because the jump from there is not much. After that, how far do you think is the jump from there to the church or Islam? Throw in drugs, it's over. And you're losing a crucial battleground border state. So I'm very clear. Keep attacking the Vedic core of the Hindu philosophy in whatever name, under whatever rubric, under whatever umbrella. You're paving the way for anti-Hinduism at some point or the other. Two more examples, Tamil Nadu, parts of coastal Andhra, Kerala. The jump is not far. Stop vilifying people. You can't say that I am going to unify Hinduism by making one group the punching bag of your positions constantly, in the hope that it will unify people by creating a hate figure within. You don't have the guts to create a hate figure outside, therefore you're constantly creating a hate figure within. If you had the guts to create a hate figure outside, you would identify the true culprit outside. You don't want to do that, because today you're willing to co-opt the jihadi but alienate the Brahmin. That is a conscious choice that some people have made within the Hindutva fold. That is the conscious choice they've made, that we will isolate these groups because we need to accommodate everybody else. What vision is this? So what is the message that you're sending to people who subscribe by the rules of the Veda? Answer that question first, because the Vedic Sanatana Dharma happens to be the core of Hindu Dharma for all practical purposes, the epicenter of this entire ocean that has been created. So what are you telling those institutions? Are you asking us to leave this country? If yes, how different are you from the Naxalwadi, or the Marxistwadi, or the Jihadi? This question needs to be answered. This is the most raging internal debate that needs to be addressed, because this virus has infected our ideology. And the discussion is not happening in the places where it has to happen, because people are taking pot shots sitting in their ivory towers, when the price is actually being paid by people on the ground. You are inciting people against each other on the ground. Go to parts of Uttar Pradesh. The biggest threat to Hinduism, especially in Uttar Pradesh, is going to come from Chandrasekhar Azad. You take it from me. You take it from me. It's going to come from that gentleman. And people sitting here will co-opt even him in the name of Hindu unity and alienate everybody else. Wait for this to happen. This is the direction in which we are hurtling at this point. In the process, you don't have what it takes to create knowledge. You have not preserved anything. You will destroy and spew and spit on everything that has been created for millennia. So my answer is very clear. My positions on this subject are not at loggerheads with Hindu dignity and Hindu unity. They are not. And if you constantly want to use untouchability as the touchstone for every position on Varnashrama Dharma, I'm sorry to say, you must be treated as an insider-outsider or a mole or a Trojan, which is even worse than the outsider.
Just like to add a few points, if I may, if we have the time, I think. Thank you. Just extending from what Sai said, and I'll come to the political part a little bit later. It always befuddles me why Hindus fight amongst each other for thousands of years. And I'll tell you why I'm at peace with if we lose everything, but that has a scientific perspective. Again, I'll come to that later because we are completely insignificant specks here today, gone tomorrow, so it doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is that person who fights with someone, a Hindu who fights with another Hindu because there is disagreement on caste, disagreement on a few other things that one person feels is wrong, that same person doesn't even think twice to have a Muslim friend who has never condemned the rank oppressiveness, the rank misogyny, patriarchy, othering, supremacist views that he espouses. It befuddles me. There itself, and I think Sai also mentioned a little bit, you are co-opting jihadis, he said, at the expense of your own. This is it. And I've talked to people who are in disagreement with a lot of people who now they have branded as espousing casteism, untouchable. I said, have you even read the religious dogma that you are friendly with people, with Muslims? Have they ever condemned it? They might not follow it, but have they ever condemned it? You demand from people who believe in, one system, condemn it, condemn this. Do you go around asking your Muslim friends, condemn this openly, publicly, privately, whatever? You don't. You accept them as they are and say, look, I am a Hindu, you're a Muslim, stay like that. Prime Minister Modi gave 75 interviews, in the last 3 months. He didn't give interviews to leftists, obviously, or to, those leftist rags and all those things. He gave it to people who he thought were on, quote unquote, again, our side. Right-wingers, anchors, whatever you may call it, Did any of those anchors, any of those people who are, and it also came out, all of them said, none of those interviews were scripted. And I've talked to people in the government, and Narendra Modi did not say, or there was no prescribed thing that this question is to be asked, this and that. How is it that none of them asked, why are temples still under your control? How is it that none of right-wingers asked, why were you silent on Nupur? What was the signal you were giving? How is it that none of them asked them, why are you silent on Bengal? All those hundreds of Karyakartas who've died, who've been murdered. Why are you silent on Sabrimala when the Congress overturned a Supreme Court judgment to placate Muslims wrongly? The Shah Bano judgment was actually for the Muslim, it was towards reforming Muslim society, if not Islam, because that can't be, it's forbidden. The Congress overturned that judgment. Out here, the Sabrimala judgment was against perceived discrimination. It wasn't discrimination. How is it discrimination when in just one of the Ayappa temples, because the deity is celibate and requests that women of a certain age group who are menstruating not be allowed, in other Ayappa temples they're allowed. But the fact of the matter is that there are Hindu temples, I think 10 of them, where men are not allowed. So how is it discrimination if in some temples, one temple, women are not allowed? Is that discrimination? Why didn't Narendra Modi have the courage to at least talk about this? I'm fed up of being a votary of bottom-up approach. Absolutely fed up. If the person on the top is silent, I'm sorry, that's a calamity. And everything stems from there. When people saw that Nupur was not supported even by her own, the biggest signal was sent to these jihadis and Islamists. Yeah. We can do anything and get away with it. So let us look inwards. And that inwards cannot happen if all of us are fighting over reasons where all of us are hypocritical. We are accepting, as you say, co-opting people who have such shocking views that the only thing more bizarre than that is homosexuals accepting Sharia law.
Two questions. I agree with what we discussed on caste, but one sad truth is that caste discrimination is still there. As much we may dislike it and we may justify it that the Varna system is not exactly discriminatory or feeling of anyone superior and inferior. How do we see all this, reconcile all this with the sad truth that caste discrimination and even caste-based violence is still there? Second is we have freedom of expression in our constitution, which should be there in every civilized society.
We don't.
Yeah, I agree. But how do we reconcile that to the fact that in the name of freedom of expression, we say Lord Ram was a misogynist. In the name of freedom of expression, we say Swami Vivekanand was a Hindu supremacist. Right. In the name of freedom of expression, we say Kashmiri Hinduओं के साथ ऐसा कुछ हुआ ही नहीं था. And this is a hyper toxic nationalist movie which was made. How do we reconcile these things?
So when you speak of caste discrimination, typically the conventional narrative is a one-way street. I'm saying open up the conversation. There is all sorts of discrimination going on at multiple levels by a lot of people. Talk about that. Because according to us, when the Supreme Court says even if there is one instance of discrimination, it must be treated as discrimination because individual rights is the star in the constellation of rights in the Constitution, is the Supreme Court's position in Sabarimala judgment. Okay. How many instances of reverse discrimination has the Supreme Court of the Indian state taken cognizance of? Everyone who speaks of caste discrimination, and even someone like me, I'll be very blunt about this. Have you ever seen me make an argument against Article 17 which abolishes untouchability? Never. Never. I have not even sought to bring any justifications to say, no, this article needs to go. Have you seen me make an argument against Article 25(2)(b) which says that the entry of formally displaced classes into Hindu temples must be abolished? Did I say that? I've never made that statement. In fact, have you ever seen me make a single statement or argument against the existence of the SC/ST Atrocities Act? The only time I actually took a position, and it's on public record, UCC lecture, Bangalore, when they tried to boycott me, as part of that lecture, a boy from perhaps the Dalit community asked me a question, what is your position going to be on this? Will the BJP government in the garb of bringing the UCC affect our rights? At that point I said, of all the governments, the BJP government does not have the guts to do it. Nothing of that sort will happen. Your rights will be fully protected because when the Supreme Court specifically inserted safeguards within the SC/ST Atrocities Act to prevent its abuse, this government legislated it out.
Yes.
Okay? Therefore, I said, I have not even presented a position remotely challenging the existence of that legislation, despite the Supreme Court taking cognizance of multiple instances of abuse. Caste discrimination is a reality. I am not pixelating it. I am not pixelating the fact that it actually happens across the board. I have never even denied it. When I wrote the piece that even if the formulation of caste is a Western construct, so what? I actually have that email specifically saying, I told the Indian Express that you mistitled the whole damn thing because that my title was not caste as a Western construct. I said caste as a Western construct, so what? Does it change anything on the ground? That was the question that I was asking. So therefore I said, the problem starts with official fixation of the structure completely and branding it for life. That means once you enter a certain category, you're stuck with that for the rest of your life. when in fact the movement and mobility of jatis has been different prior to its official fixation by the British man. That's where I was coming from. Now, let's assume for a moment you say, but still caste discrimination or Varna Jati discrimination existed before. Allow me to say this. Discrimination of all forms has always existed. The fact that you choose to focus your discriminatory lens exclusively on caste gives the distinct impression that all of the social structures are free of discrimination. So gender discrimination exists. Yes or no? It happens now both ways thanks to 498A. Right? Now in such a situation, shall we destroy the concept of genders altogether? But the left is already doing it, is what I've said. That's what they're saying. Right? Religions also discriminate against each or between each other. For the most part. What do you want to do? Every identity will create the concept of them and us. Then you should have a fundamental problem with the concept of identity itself. Let's start by saying Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, therefore there's no concept of family also. Because then my family, your family. What are you expected to do? I would have expected the Indian state to hit the reset button on the manner in which Indian social structure has been represented by the colonial establishment in 1947 and change the whole damn thing by saying present facts, don't pixelate anything, but don't magnify or exaggerate something. That is the position you should have taken. And that goes with the caveat, certainly have the Atrocities Act, certainly have the provision with respect to abolition of untouchability, certainly have the provision with respect to entry of formerly deprived classes into temples, have all of that. I will even go to the extent of saying, so for whatever period, reservation as a formula, if it is meant to actually address certain grievances, retain that, but don't expand it beyond that. But what has happened over the years, after the Mandal Commission? It has only seen the Mandalization of the Hindu community, not consolidation of the Hindu community. It hasn't. You can't speak of annihilation of caste on the one hand and constantly speak of expansion of the pie of reservation on the other hand. And you can't say that reservation will be given exclusively on birth basis, but you have a problem with Varnashrama Dharma on the birth basis. These arguments don't fly. That means you will pick and choose a certain argument to hit out at a certain system, but you will retain everything else that you get by way of a benefit thanks to the very same system. That can't happen. That can't happen. That means you're therefore saying the existing status quo works fantastically for me because a certain piece of literature helps me constantly guilt trip you, and the benefits that come out of the guilt tripping will continue in the constitutional form. How fair is this? The very same set of people don't get to talk about caste annihilation because their entire electoral arithmetic starts and ends with jati. The day you stop it, you get to pontificate to others. But as long as you're pontificating to us on jati, and you're also having jati-based calculus for electoral tickets and ticket distribution and how do people vote, you don't get to speak of samajik nyaya and social justice at all. You're the last person who should pontificate the rest of us on the subject. I'm never going to say don't speak of discrimination. I've never said that. I will never say that. Go for amelioratory measures, but somewhere strike a balance. Somewhere strike a balance. Today you've skewed it so much that the Hindu community is now fighting like rats within itself, amongst itself, as opposed to focusing on external challenges. And that battle has proven itself to be the most important and dangerous battle in the elections of 2024, which according to me is a reflection of the future path of the Congress party. I said this before. That they have realized that this is the weak link. And then we had geniuses basically saying, that's why we are saying jati ko destroy karo. And you tried pitting jati against Hindutva, jati won. You should find a way to blend both. Why? Let's take the answer of what the other gentleman said. I'll explain this. Jati is a phenomenon of the subcontinent, of the Indian subcontinent, because we have all been Hindus at one point. Right? And therefore the jati identity continues. What happened during the colonial period is the exaltation of the jati identity at the expense of the Hindu identity. Exaltation of the local identity at the expense of the Sanskritic identity. Therefore leading to jati-based movements and therefore leading to regional movements and chauvinistic movements like the Dravidian movement. The same fault line has expressed itself in two different ways. Therefore, the point is, if the other communities also have jati, there is a very famous preacher from Pakistan who speaks on a regular basis, and apparently Amir Khan is a great fan of this man, and they met in Makkah also. This gentleman never... not engineer. This guy never stops saying that I'm a descendant of Prithviraj Chauhan. He never stops saying that we are Rajputs. That Nasal identity continues to exist even there. You're telling me that there are no caste-based churches in Goa? or in Andhra Pradesh or in Telangana, of course they are there. But why is it that they are not suffering from divisions? Because they are not focusing on internal divisions when they're looking at everybody else outside. We have chosen to consciously air internal divisions in public. Fine, go ahead, deal with it. But what you're doing is you're creating enemies within and alienating insiders while constantly welcoming the outsider. And you don't have a clear sense of who the outgroup is. They do. They know who does not belong to the Muslim identity. They know who does not belong to the Christian identity. Whereas we are the ones saying, जो भी यहाँ पे पैदा हुआ हिंदू है DNA के basis पे. Huh? Fundamental philosophy of psychology. A community is created both by the definition of the in-group and the definition of the out-group, who belongs and who does not belong. You have modeled it fully. Don't hold the community responsible when you continue pushing the very same policy, even after 75 years. You have created a political and an economic incentive to continue exalting the local at the expense of the national and the civilizational. That is the story of post-independence Bharat.
About this question of discrimination, whether there is caste discrimination, I do believe that it is more a narrative than fact-driven. And I would suggest anyone who's interested in this question to explore its nuances to read this paper by Sufia Pathan and Duncan Jalki. It is called "Is There a Case for Caste Discrimination in India?" and what the numbers tell us. And I'm quite certain that anyone who reads the paper will be surprised by the findings.